Welcome, everybody, to the Nobody Studios Culture live stream. And today we're diving into a topic that's become an essential part of our Nobody Studios culture, meditation and how it connects, and specifically how it connects creativity and innovation. And so joining me today, we have two incredible human beings that have been part of this journey with me, Tom Kotlarek and PK Naidoo, both what I like to call is my co-facilitators in our Meditate to Innovate sessions that we've had going on at Nobody Studios for, oh God, it's coming up on over 3 years, right? So we started the sessions, and at first Tom and I were doing these sessions together, and then we took a short break, and then we brought PK into the mix, and he's brought this really fresh energy and perspective as we resumed these sessions last year. So today we're going to talk to both Tom and PK about their experiences and sort of help raise some awareness on some of these topics that we're talking about. And so let's get started. Let's just jump right in, Tom. I'd like to start with you on a personal note. Maybe you could kick it off by sharing a little bit about your background and your own journey, a little bit about your own journey with meditation.
Thanks so much, Sejal. Thanks for having me here, and good to be with PK as well. We enjoy collaborating every month, and we put a lot of work and preparation into that, and we're both growing in our practice. So I was a elementary school educator. I was a principal, a teacher, program designer, curriculum coordinator. So empowering people and getting people to live better is my profession and certainly my passion. And in wanting to know how to live the best way possible, I moved into the idea of altered states of consciousness through natural means. That took me into what some folks call meditation, which in what I now call the meditative state. Cultivating a deep, profound, meditative state. And if you don't mind, I'll say that is different from mindfulness, in that mindfulness is really more about just being present in the moment and knowing one is present in the moment, and then knowing what it is that you're present with. Meditation and the meditative state, as I said, is about going deeper into what could be called an altered state, an alternative state of consciousness, but again, only by natural means.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that difference, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, is that a lot of times people use, mindfulness and meditation interchangeably, or it's unclear. So I'm glad that you shed some light on that right off the bat. And PK, I would love to hear from you about how you've sort of integrated mindfulness into your own practice over the years.
Well, for me, I'm not as a seasoned vet as Tom with meditation and the practice of going into these altered states. But one of the things that we did discuss, and one of the books that Tom had mentioned that was a great idea to get into early on in our sessions, was the 4 agreements. And so the 4 agreements, the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. So me not knowing exactly what mindfulness is in this realm, I look at the word itself, mindfulness, and I've got to say it doesn't feel like the description of what we're doing, just because mindfulness, mindful, we're not really filling our mind. We're more of focusing our mind on certain intentions, focusing our mind on what it is, the practice that we're doing, whether it be breathing or visualizing or casting a circle. There's so many different things. So it's almost like an injustice to the practice to call it mindfulness, just because it's not exactly what we are doing. My journey to get to that state of awareness and the state of focus has been, since, like you mentioned early on, almost 3 years now. We have been doing the practices. We had our own sessions, and then you had the awesome idea of including other nobodies and making it specifically meditate to innovate, rather than just a meditation session. have a little bit more focus and show us different ways to incorporate meditation into things we do in everyday life, and also to use meditation to give us different, whether it be perspective or inspiration or whatever it is. um, it's been great though. However you want to describe what it is that we are doing, it's been great for me personally. It's helped me feel more centered. It's helped me get over certain issues that I had that were going, kind of rumbling around in my mind. I had a couple of friends had passed away early on in our sessions, and being able to address those emotions when, as a male, a lot of times it's not great, or society doesn't deem it great to be open with your emotions. But with our meditations, there's no judgment like that. There's no looking down on you, if you will, for sharing your emotions. It's something that is encouraged. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, PK. And I got into I've been doing meditation for a long time in my life, but not the type of meditation that I started doing when I met with Tom. Right? I would sort of infuse it with walking, or when I was at home and just sitting in silence and things like that. But actually going and trying different techniques and learning how to go deeper within was all things that I've learned as we've kind of been on this journey, the three of us together, right? And so, but not everybody is immediately sold on meditation, right? There are some people out there that can just be skeptical, a bit skeptical about it, right? And so, Tom, I'd love to hear from you about, you do this all the time and you're working with different groups all over, the different states that you're working with, and maybe even different countries, right? So how do you approach engaging participants who might be hesitant about the value of incorporating meditation as part of their practices? And what, maybe you can share a strategy or something that you use to help people connect to the practice.
Well, thanks so much, Sejal. First of all, I do have to say that I only encounter people who want to learn what I'm doing. I don't encounter skeptics. I don't try to sell this to anybody. I don't try to push this on anybody. I only invite people, once they find out what I do, I invite them to participate if that's what they feel like they're called to do. The word called is really important there. But let me comment on what you just spoke in a broader sense of connecting mindfulness, the word meditation, and then what I call the meditative state. You really did a great job by speaking about practices of meditation, like walking in nature, simply sitting and breathing, gazing at beauty. Those are good techniques, and they are all called meditation. Even things, apps on the phone or on the computer that are taking people into basically visualizations, those are all considered meditations as well. And I appreciate that you spoke that. And I already talked about what mindfulness is, being simply aware of what is happening in the present moment and cultivating an ability to be more and more aware of multiple stimulation in the field of awareness. So again, mindfulness, awareness in the present moment, meditation, a kind of mental state that has many varieties, and it's become generic. And so that's why I moved to the third definition here, or identity of the meditative state, which includes awareness, which includes breath, which you find in mindfulness and meditation. But it includes more than that in creating of numerous elements that result in what I would call an expanded, deepened state of wide potential, tremendous potential. But again, it's based in openness, non-judgment, or suspending judgment. So important, especially when we get into creativity, but even just into going into a deeper meditative state, one has to become the observer. And that's very well known. A classic understanding of being the observer as a state of mind, a mentality, a position of oneself in the world, and accessing the opportunities that come when we are in an observer role.
Yeah, no, that's all. We're going to get into the benefits of why people should incorporate this into their daily lives, right? And the three of us have talked about this, right? But let's, before we talk about the benefits, right? Let's talk about real life, right? The challenges. And we've also talked about that, right? That come with meditation. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed and started doing more of after meeting with Mark was the group meditations, right? Where you bring people together and you collectively meditate together. And there's a whole different, beautiful energy that comes from doing it together, right? And for a while, Tom and I were hosting these events on Saturdays, and we would just bring in people from all walks of life, and we would just meditate together. And it was just, I mean, literally, I would feel the effects from one of those sessions for the whole week after that. And then you'd have all these like light bulb aha moments going off, and you're like, is this because of that session? Is this because I went deeper, or he planted a seed in my head, right? And so I really liked the group meditation, right? But there's some real life challenges that people have when it comes to incorporating meditation, right? And so, PK, in your experience, right, what are some of the barriers that you faced or that you have faced in maintaining a practice of doing that, right? And maybe you could share a little bit about how often you meditate and what some of the barriers that you've had to work through.
Sure. And I wanted to touch on your previous question to Tom about what would you say to skeptics.
Yeah.
I myself, before we started our journey, I wouldn't say I was skeptical. I was just, just didn't seem like it was something for me. I had tried meditation in the past before, and the person that I was doing it with, we did groups, and what we would do was just dive into emptying your mind and just focusing on nothing, on nothingness. And it was just so difficult for me to do that. It almost seemed like isn't real. Like, this isn't something I can do. Like, just empty my mind. There was no focus on okay, first focus on your breathing, and then focus on your grounding, and then focus on the energy of the stars. There was no process. It was just kind of like throwing you into the deep end of the pool and asking you to swim. And so to me, it was a discouraging practice. It was something that it just didn't make sense to me. Like, how am I supposed to just clear my mind like with a snap of a finger? Because we started a session and without any coaching or someone that was well practiced in the field guiding what we were doing. And so it kind of tainted my perception of what meditation is. And then when I started attending the sessions with the two of you and Kathleen, it completely changed course. So for people out there that think that there's only one type of meditation, or meditation is this, it's not. It depends on who you're working with, who your guide is, what you want to seek from it, what it is you're looking for. Meditation can be really so many different things, and you have to explore and find for yourself what it is you want it to be, what you want to get out of it. And intention, Tom always uses the word intention. Intention is such an important aspect of it. But going back to your question about my practice with meditation, Sejal, I don't really have a set time or a set number of times that I meditate. It's whenever I have I have time, or whenever I need to focus my mind, or if I want to think about something, I want to get through something, I give myself some time to utilize the different practices that we do. And it might not be all of the practices. It might not be a set way of doing things. It could just be something as simple as breathing. So if I'm having difficulty sleeping, for example, I utilize the box breathing, which is, holding your breath, or breathing in, for however many seconds, holding your breath for that same amount of time, exhaling for that amount of time, and then holding your breath and repeating the process over and over. And I found that helps me go to sleep fairly quickly once you do that, because you're concentrating on breathing. You're not concentrating on all the different stresses that life is throwing at you and all the things that you have to do.
Yeah, I hear you, PK. That was one of the things that, like, for what I've heard from people when we're talking about doing meditation is, I don't have time. I'm too busy, and I've said that myself. But then it's when I get caught in that trap of thinking that meditation has to look a certain way. It doesn't, and when I start looking at my daily schedule, right, saying, okay, every day from this time to this time, I'm going to meditate, it's just something that doesn't work for me, but that being said, I think it is important to be consistent. At least that's what I've noticed in my practice of, doesn't matter what time you do it. My schedule varies from day to day. I've got 3 different calendars that are, running my day. And so I can't do the time allotment per day, or I'm going to do a group meditation. I can't do that. That puts too much constraints on my schedule. But one thing I have done, and this took some time, is to get consistent about it, where I feel like now I incorporate some sort of practice into my daily routine, right? Because it's easy to skip sessions. It's easy to say, I can't join the Meditate to Innovate session. I tell this to our team all the time, is that, look, if you can't make the session, we record it so that you can watch it, you can practice on your own. Do it when it works for you, and here's the thing. It's like, if it's a priority, and Tom, you say this all the time, right? If you make it a priority, you're going to find time for it, right? And I love this. There's a comment that's coming in, and I want to remind everybody in the audience, like, if you're tuning in, we're streaming live right now on several different social media channels. If you've got questions for Tom or PK or me, just throw them into the chat. And Casey Dudley is joining us here, and he said, at PK, I love that. He mentions the 4 agreements, and that was one of the books that Tom told me about as well. And he said, you mentioned the first, be impeccable with your work. I love that. He said, I'm so intrigued. I would be grateful to learn of the other 3. May I DM you? Absolutely. And Tom, maybe you want to share real quickly what the other 3 are, but we'll share Tom's contact information with everybody at the end of the show. And absolutely think of Tom as a resource, and reach out to him if you have any of these kind of questions. He just knows so much about this area.
Well, thank you so much, Sejal. Let's everybody take a breath. Let's everybody go into the breath for a moment, because there is so much excellent thought happening here. So take a breath or 2 again. When we do that, we give ourselves time to really absorb the grace, if you will, the beauty, how well this all fits together. We need to take time to appreciate that. And so that's part of our practice with the meditative state. So just breathe again. I'm going to go down a list here. So I'd rather leave the other 3 agreements out for now, because I want to go back to what PK was saying about people who are skeptical. All of what he said there, when you listen to this, great explanation on that, PK. Really excellent. Sejal, then you've spoken about, you asked a question about when do you do it? What's your practice? So this is one of the most important things of our conversation that I want to emphasize. And good meditation teachers will explain this, what I'm going to say. We practice. However often you practice, and I'm going to give you some guidance on that, but we practice so that when we stop practicing, we're able to continue to stay in a meditative state that we have cultivated during our holding still, sitting still practice. We don't want to just practice to practice and be good at practicing. We want to be good at being calm, as you've spoken about benefits now, right? Being calm, being focused, being relaxed, being centered, being balanced. We want to take all of that with us throughout our entire day. So the most important thing I can say is it's a person can aspire to be in the meditative state all the time. Now let's go to practice. When to do this? This is some of the most important guidance I can give right now. When a person's going to improve their ability to hold that meditative state, to go into the meditative state and hold the meditative state, which again, as I said, focused, balanced, centered, present. When they're going to do that, I suggest to people two things. Give me 12 breaths. Don't look at time. Time is not a use when we're going into the meditative state, and we're going to ultimately walk in the meditative state all the time. We want to be focused on just the breath. So give me 12 breaths. That's my first guidance. Notice that's going to take you 2 minutes, maybe. Everybody can put that in their day, and they can put it in a day twice a day. I tell people, do it in the morning. If you want to do it right when you wake up, great. Otherwise, in the first 10 minutes, great. Or whatever, before you have your coffee. And then do it at the end of the day. Like PK was saying. He said doing the 4x4 box breathing helped him go to sleep. So that's what I'm saying. 12 breaths twice a day. Everybody can do that. So you see, that addresses the things that people say that I don't have time, and on and on and on. 12 breaths twice a day, and you're going to develop a good practice, because you're going to know that you want to do it even more often than that, because it's going to feel so good. And maybe you stop at lunchtime, or maybe you take a bathroom break and you go in the bathroom and you sit there and you breathe 12 times. Just 12 times is all you need to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, because the practice will teach you by itself. This is a very fascinating reality, that by practicing, a person will go deeper on their own, because the practice will take you there. And I want to emphasize one other thing that PK said. He said when he's using the box breathing, when he's going to go to sleep, and what he contrasted that with was his mind was going to be busy, but instead his mind had a job to do, and that job was to just count do the counts for his 4 phases, counting on his in-breath, counting on the hold, counting on his exhale, and counting on the hold. He gave his mind a job, and he fell asleep quickly because the mind couldn't think about that other stuff. It already had a job. So that's a great wisdom, PK. I really appreciate you sharing that. Lots of excellent information in this chat, Sejal. So go ahead. I hope I touched on what you were asking about.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick with what you had mentioned with breathing, Tom. A lot of times we take breathing for granted because it's something that the body just does naturally, but we don't realize that our emotions can take a toll on that breathing, and how it could shorten the breath. It could make us out of breath. It could do so many different things. So with what Tom's saying with the 12 breaths, it's so important, because you're doing 12 deep breaths, and it's invigorating. It really brings energy and power to your whole body by just breathing, because you're concentrating on breathing, you're deep breathing, and you're really feeding and nourishing your body and your soul.
Yes, yes. And this conversation is resonating with people, as I knew it would. We've got Queenie Donaldson joining us, saying, enjoying the conversation. Thanks, Sejal, for the invite. And also want to give a shout out to George Fisher, who's saying, great conversation. Thank you for joining us, everybody. And this is an important topic, right? And so both of you have started to go there already, which is the perfect segue into the next question, right? You started identifying some of the benefits of incorporating meditation or going into the meditative state into your practices, right? Talk to us a little bit more about some of the benefits. And then I'd love to really talk, after we talk about some of the general benefits that people can see. And of course, it's over time, right? I want to impress that on everybody, that these benefits oftentimes build gradually. They did for me. It wasn't like even with PK, you were saying that too. It wasn't like immediately like this game changer. I just woke up and all of my stress and everything was gone. It wasn't like that. It took some time. But now that I've learned how to tap into that meditative state, I can go into it very quickly. And so talk to us about some of the benefits, Tom, if you can. And then I'd love to, again, go a little bit deeper on the Meditate to Innovate sessions and talk about some of the specific objectives there about connecting our team with creativity and innovation.
I want to address your question, but I want to touch on what PK said, because what he said touched on what I said about the practice will teach you by itself. And this is really very important, because it also touched on what you're saying, Sejal, about it does happen over time. And people might wonder, well, do I have to be with a teacher all the time? And I'm saying, no, you don't have to. So here's what PK said. He said that he noticed in going into the breathing, 12 breaths, he used the word invigorate. He noticed the benefit of feeling invigorated. Now, this is what I would offer. Yes, indeed, PK, that is one of the possibilities. Because earlier I talked about being in the meditative state gives a person the opportunity to tap into numerous possibilities. And so this is where the technique, the practice teaches you by itself, because what I'm saying a person should do that is breathe, implement the parts of the technique that we teach, and then be the observer and watch what happens. There's where you're learning on your own. Some people are going to be invigorated. Some people are going to be really, really relaxed. Some people are going to be driving their car and going into that mental state like you did, Sejal. And then there's even more beyond that. And a person could be very, very calm and still, but feel very energized and invigorated, like PK said. So there are many, many different ways that the benefits can show up. And that's the point I'm emphasizing right here off what PK said, that go into the practice, discover what the meditative state feels like to you, discover what affects the meditative state, or what effects the practice has for you. May not be the same for everybody. And that's a beautiful, beautiful aspect of the practice, because we get to explore something about living as a human being that's not scripted in a textbook or by rules. It becomes an invitation to practice ways of thought and ways of breathing, certainly, that result in many different, what I would call states of being or states of consciousness. So earlier I mentioned, going on to your question, Sejal, earlier I mentioned that some of the benefits are when we begin to go into breath awareness, we notice that we become present in our thinking, which connects us to mindfulness. We become focused, right? The mind isn't always focused. We become centered. Oh, we know where we are. We know where we stand. We just have a felt sense of certainty about ourselves in the moment. And then another benefit is being balanced. Again, I hope people can feel what I'm speaking of. Those are some of the biggest benefits there. The cognitive clarity, right? And then the physical well-being, which includes the relaxation. And, it can go into healing. Believe it or not, we can go into healing through the meditative state. And I'll just say one more thing on that. I do healing work with people, and the most important thing for the person who's receiving any kind of healing benefit is that they are in their best meditative state. And I take them there before I do any kind of other work. So the receptivity matters, the openness, invites the receptivity, but the benefits can be from, as I said, all the way into deep physical healing, emotional healing, and on and on and on. I hope I answered your question. There's just so much there.
You did. And again, I think what really resonates is what both of you have said over and over again, right? Is that everyone's going to be on an individual journey, and what they're going to experience may be different. We can all be doing the same sort of visualization together, and our brains or our minds can take us somewhere totally different, right? And one of the things that I do want to remind or point out for people, if you're new to this, right, something that Tom has really taught me and PK how to do during our Meditate to Innovate sessions is to set that intention up front, right? Of what is your intention? And the last few times I've done it, Tom, my intention has been to just be, right? To just be there, just be present, fully present. And I don't know, like that carries over with me once we're done with that session, right? Because being just fully present like that is really, really hard to do, right? Because there's a lot of noise, there's always these competing things that we have to do, but setting that time aside to just be present with myself, and like you said, Tom, be that observer, right? And so we've got a lot of great people joining. There's some great comments coming in, but I do want to quickly touch on, how we're bringing these types of practices into the corporate world, right? Into our studio, because it's an important part of, especially at a venture studio like ours, where we're looking to build 100 companies in the next 5 years. Getting people to tap into their creativity or become the better versions of themselves can help us to innovate, right? Innovate in a way that's never been done before. And so both of you have been with us now doing these sessions, co-facilitating these sessions. I would love to just hear about some of the techniques that we've, run through with our teams. If you could just quickly just share 2 or 3 techniques that we've introduced our team members to, that would help people that may be listening that want to start incorporating this into their organizations. So if you could share a couple of the techniques. You already talked about breath work, right? So that's an important one, of doing the 12 breaths. But what are some of the other techniques that you've introduced our team at Nobody Studios to?
I wanted to go back to what you had mentioned about being present, Sejal, and it's just such a difficult time to be present, especially with this digital age, because it's going to date me a little bit, but I grew up before the digital age, and before the digital age, it seemed easier. It might have not been easy, but it seemed easier because there wasn't this computer or phone in our pocket that is constantly able to feed us news or socialization or whatever it is that we're looking for to feed whatever it is that we feel needs to be fed. So it's a lot more difficult to be present these days with social media and with smartphones and all of that stuff. So the meditation really does help with that. And just by breathing, because once you concentrate on breathing, nothing else matters other than, even if it's just for the 12 breaths, like Tom mentioned, nothing else matters during those 12 breaths other than just breathing. So then that kind of puts your mind into a state where, okay, well, I focus just on breathing. So maybe whatever I'm doing next, I can focus just on that. And so some of the topics that we've covered in our sessions have been perspective, which allows for people to get outside of their own mind, and we discuss other people's perspectives. We've done interdependence, inspiration, stress management, and those are all different topics where we utilize the practice of meditation in order to focus on those things and understand more what those things mean to us. And with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Tom to discuss the specific techniques that we've used and we've gone through and we've built upon to get where we are today.
Right. So again, I hope everybody takes a breath right now. There's so much that can be said about techniques, but Sejal, I want to start from where you said about, in our companies, we want to collaborate and work together better. And you said we want to be the best version of ourselves. So well said and understood, Sejal. So it becomes a big question about, how do I become my best self? And going from that big question, if you can go back into what I said about the openness and the vastness that can be discovered when we're in the meditative state, from that vastness, we can discover, who am I at my best? This is one of the techniques that I do with people in a meditation group I'm leading in Africa. In order to become our best, we have to know who could we be at our best, and how good are we now, and how good can we become? We can discover all that in the meditative state. What I'm saying is, we think about concepts that bring us to our best self. Things like gratitude, appreciation, kindness. So these are some of the concepts that we use. In terms of technique, we use the breath, of course, the mechanisms of the body, which then I call body awareness, but we also use visualization. And PK referred to casting the circle. There are other visualizations about grounding and connecting into, in fact, the cosmos. Those are some of the techniques that I would refer to here. I don't know how much more time we have. So that's starting from a general perspective, zooming into a couple specific techniques. But I would also add, I want to tell the gentleman, here we go. Here we go. The 4 agreements. Number 1, be impeccable with your word. Number 2, don't assume anything. Number 3, don't take anything personal. And number 4, always do your best. So yeah, reach out to PK, Sejal, myself. You want to go deeper and know more and more and more about this stuff? Let's make it happen. Thank you. Go ahead. Thanks.
That was wonderful, Tom. And Queenie, I wanted to read you her comment that she wrote. She goes, I absolutely love the 4 agreements. I need this, or I read this when I'm going through a life challenge or transition to bring me back centered. Absolutely. And for a while, I had to print it out and I had it stuck to my wall so I can see it every time. I am going to ask one last question, even though we are over time, but I knew this conversation would go longer than what we had anticipated, but that's okay. But, I do want to ask you this question because, again, for the skeptics that are listening to this, right? We've been doing this now at the studio for over 3 years, right? And both of you have been involved in facilitating these sessions. And Tom, you've been leading these sessions, right? And introducing us to a variety. You just touched on 2 or 3 of the amazing techniques that we've learned from you, but there has been so many that you have taught us. And I'm always learning. I feel like every time I come into one of your sessions, it's a blank slate. Like I'm learning something all over again, right? And so from both of you, or I would love to hear from both of you on this, is, you've made observations, right, of the teams, of our team members or nobody that show up at these sessions. And what have you noticed about the impact of these sessions? Or have you noticed any shifts or dynamics? Because some of the folks have come over and over again, right? And so I'd love to hear your observations of what you've noticed over the last 3 years.
So it's usually the same group of people, might not always fit their schedule, but they might be there for one, not the next, or vice versa. And like Tom had mentioned, it's people that are open-minded and open to practicing with us and growing with us. And I've seen certain aha moments where people haven't really thought about doing something, and then someone else mentions it, and they say, "Oh man, I really enjoyed that. I need to get back to that." The group inspiring each other is something that I've observed, and is really awesome. And it really, and just, I think it was last week we started last session we started casting the circle, which allows us to feel each other's power and each other's energy and utilize that, and then pass it on to the next person, and then pass it on to the next person, and then all of our energy is now combined, and we bring others into the circle with our thoughts, and we utilize their energy. And so it's just this exponential growth of an energy that, sometimes we could feel down, or we could feel a certain way, or even if we feel good, by tapping into that meditative state, and casting the circle, and remembering that practice or whatever we did in that moment. It allows us to draw from an energy that is always there, but we don't really think about. And by thinking about it, we're able to tap into it when we need it. And so that's one of my observations, or 2 of my observations.
Well, Sejal, it's a great question. I actually mentioned that to PK the other day, wondering if he's getting any feedback from anybody about those benefits. And we don't really have a surveying mechanism or anything like that, asking folks for feedback. So that could be valuable. But this would be my sense of it. What I've observed is the people who come over and over again, they realize there's a benefit. They might not speak of what that benefit has been, but they know there's a benefit because they keep coming. And what I would say is that some of the people tend to be more spiritually oriented, meaning they're seeking greater or deeper truth about life. That's a very, very big topic. But that's the sense I have about some folks, and our technique does help with that. I believe there's also some benefit that's being experienced by some very high achieving people, and they're finding that they're able to take what PK and I are teaching, what you're teaching, and it's making a difference. We hear certain comments and we know it's making a difference. It's hard. We can't quantify what those differences are, but the fact that people keep coming says that they're gaining something. They're gaining something. So we could survey, but bringing it to the workplace in order to be high achieving in the workplace, which includes being creative, we have to be our best self. We have to know who we are at our best. We have to be able to bring our best self to our work situation, to our collaboration with our coworkers. And so this technique allows people to explore and discover more of who they are and become more of who they are at their best self, bringing their best self to the workplace, to their collaborations with their coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. I just said the word become, but I have to go back, Sejal, because you said something so very important. This is in great contrast to the word become. And you said the word being, and that you are going into a place of being in our recent sessions. And there's even more power in that state and that understanding of being rather than becoming. And in that state of being, we actually tap into the potential I've spoken about now twice before, because being is so broad and vast as opposed to becoming. A little abstract there, but if people want to go deeper, well, we'll do it another time.
That was so great. I loved all of that. And so I want to thank both of you, Tom and PK, for sharing these wonderful insights and practical strategies for people. You know, it's been inspiring being on this journey with the two of you and bringing this into the studio. And I would love, and I'm just going to put the intention out there, to bring this to other organizations, right? I would love for the three of us to bring Meditate to Innovate into all organizations, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to fuel the creativity. It's what, you know, the observation that I've made, and I'll just add that, is just the bonding that happens within the team. You know, it takes away a lot of the walls and the layers. And so that when you're making big decisions or you're working on a project together and you got to move quickly, you can trust easier, you know, because you've become, I like to say, you've done this session together, or you've seen each other, and you're in this vulnerable state with each other where you're doing something collectively together. And so I've noticed that with the folks that have joined those sessions, it's much easier for me to collaborate. And so thank you again for being here and educating us and raising this level of awareness. And thank you to everyone that joined us. Really appreciate the interaction and the engagement. Tom, once again, can you please tell people how they can get a hold of you if they have other questions or they want to learn more about some of the practices you talked about?
Please do call me. I'm in the Central Standard Time Zone, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The area code is 262-894-3132. And I want to piggyback on that by saying that, you know, you talk about rapport and you talk about bonding, and you're so correct, Sejal. I'm really glad you brought that into the idea about working in groups and what occurs. And you and I have been together, Sejal, longer than PK and I have, so you've had an opportunity to learn a whole lot longer than he has. But I do want to say that this young man continues to pick my brain, and he wants to go deeper and deeper and deeper all the time. And he's pushing me, and we're going there. So everybody should know that it becomes a journey. It becomes exciting. PK is invigorated, and he just wants more and more and more. And Sejal, thank you for all you've said about what you've gained from me over these years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And touching on what you mentioned, Sejal, about trust and how quickly we're able to trust by doing these circles together. It just takes me back to us getting together in Milwaukee. You know, I'm the type of person that usually likes to be in control. And you had mentioned, let's go visit Tom, and it would be completely out of my control, something out of my wheelhouse, something out of my comfort zone. And I just said yes. Going to stay with someone that I had never really met in person before, and stay with them for a weekend and do meditative practices and sound baths, and it wouldn't have been possible without the camaraderie and the closeness that we had built on session after session.
Absolutely. No, that was such a fantastic experience. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Nobody Culture live stream. Have a great day, everyone.